I'd like to table
The Honourable
that.
House Leader for the New Democratic Party.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Justice. Through a Freedom of Information request, our caucus received a demographic profile of adult individuals in provincial correctional facilities. On April 1, 2019, 13% of adults in provincial facilities identified as African Nova Scotian or Black. However, Black people make up less than 3% of our provincial population. Clearly, something is wrong here. Mr. Speaker, what concrete steps has the minister taken over 6 years in government to address the overrepresentation of Black people in corrections?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for the question. A number of steps have been taken within corrections and our facilities. Program services, Mr. Speaker. Recently, hiring complete graduate classes of African Nova Scotians, hiring of Aboriginal members, Mr. Speaker. There are strategies, Mr. Speaker, that speak specifically to these issues, and corrections services applying those both through human resource hiring and program delivery within our facilities, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable House Leader for the New Democratic Party.
Mr. Speaker, the strategy put forward more than any other is ending street checks. In March, a Human Rights Commission report found that African Nova Scotians are 6 times more likely to be street checked by police than white people. Report author Dr. Scott Wortley writes that a small degree of racial bias at each stage of the criminal justice funnel can result in gross racial disparities within the correctional system. Our province has been talking about the racist impact of street checks since 2003. Ending street checks is at least 16 years overdue. Mr. Speaker, will the minister finally commit to taking decisive action to put a permanent end to the racist practice of street checks?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My colleague would know that when the Wortley report was released, I immediately took steps, Mr. Speaker, to ban street checks. That moratorium is in place, Mr. Speaker. I think that in itself addresses what has commonly been referred to as carding. As well, Mr. Speaker, through the feedback of the Wortley report, it was identified that street checks, the data, the numbers, were being used for performance measures within law enforcement communities. I gave a directive, Mr. Speaker, that forbid that to happen into the future. I have said publicly, Mr. Speaker, that when used appropriately, street checks are a valuable tool for investigations and public safety in our communities.